To the town of our Frio rode a stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say. No one dared to ask his business, no one dared to make a slip. The stranger there among them had a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. It was early in the morning when he rode into the town. He came riding from the south side, slowly looking all around. He's an outlaw, loose and running, came the whisper from each lip, and he's here to do some business with a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. In this town there lived an outlaw by the name of Texas Red. Many men had tried to take him, and that many men were dead. He was vicious and a killer, though a youth of 24, and the notches on his pistol numbered 1 in 19 more, 1 in 19 more. Now the stranger started talking, made it plain to folks around. Was an Arizona ranger, wouldn't be too long in town. He came here to take an outlaw back alive or maybe dead, and he said it didn't matter, he was after Texas Red, after Texas Red. Wasn't long before the story was relayed to Texas Red. But the outlaw didn't worry, men that tried before were dead. 20 men had tried to take him, 20 men had made a slip. 21 would be the ranger with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. The morning passed so quickly, it was time for them to meet. It was 20 past 11 when they walked out in the street. Folks were watching from the windows, everybody held their breath. They knew this handsome ranger was about to meet his death, about to meet his death. There was 40 feet between them when they stopped to make their play. And the swiftness of the ranger is still talked about today. Texas Red had not cleared leather for a bullet fairly ripped, and the ranger's aim was deadly with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. It was over in a moment and the folks had gathered round. There before them lay the body of the outlaw on the ground. Oh, he might have went on living, but he made one fatal slip when he tried to match the ranger with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. Big iron, big iron, when he tried to match the ranger with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip.
Hello, my friends. I have another song that I want to play for you guys, and then I'll start the stream. But you got to see this one. This is the only song that I've found by this Irish woman on YouTube. So if you happen to find any more by this woman, Fianwalla McLaughlin, let me know, because she's got a great voice, and I like her style. Oh, let me turn another light on here. That's better. All right, here. Check this out.
It was down in Kilkenny that the great row was a-making, and poor little Jimmy Murphy is the lad that was taken. We are far from the last route, from the east to Downpatrick, where lies poor little Jimmy Murphy on the green, sweet, mossy bank. Kill me, Lane, kill me, Joan, whiskey, pisky, tooraloo, rank-a-doodly-doo, fly-ro-fallow. We marched through the town and we marched through the city. Our hands were tied behind us and the ladies cried pity. We are far from the last route, from the east to Downpatrick, where lies poor little Jimmy Murphy on the green, sweet, mossy bank. Kill me, Lane, kill me, Joan, whiskey, pisky, tooraloo, rank-a-doodly-doo, fly-ro-fallow. Young Jimmy Murphy was hanged not for sheep stealing, but for courting a pretty maiden, and her name was Kate Whelan. We are far from the last route, from the east to Downpatrick, where lies poor little Jimmy Murphy on the green, sweet, mossy bank. Kill me, Lane, kill me, Joan, whiskey, pisky, tooraloo, rank-a-doodly-doo, fly-ro-fallow.
So I like that song because it follows a very Irish, theme that I've come across in other Irish music, which is that they make Ireland into a woman. They personify Ireland into a woman. And it's like in the song As I Roved Out, they personify Ireland as a woman, and they talk about how bad things are when the men of Ireland betray the woman. For posterity says, "You're part Irish, right?" Yes, I'm a little bit Irish. I'm not even sure how much, but from my dad's side, he really likes Irish culture and Irish music, and we have some Irish ancestors from that side. But anyway, thank you all for coming to this live stream. It's been a while since I've done one. I really want to be more regular with these, but it's tough. I work 6 days a week now, and I've got this beautiful little 7-month-old daughter, and you know, I get burnt out sometimes. But I'd like to do these more often. It's a lot of fun, and it's I have plenty of things to talk about, so it's not like that's a problem. It's just finding the energy and the motivation to sit down for an hour or two and put everything else aside. So my daughter's asleep. My wife is making some potato pancakes, I think. And so I've got some time to spend here. So we're going to talk about a few things that have been in the news lately, some topical issues. And on first glance, you know, these issues are kind of stupid, to be honest. It's kind of stupid, pointless drama, especially this first one. I don't know if you've heard of the Steven Crowder versus Ethan Klein debate. Steven Crowder being the host of the conservative talk show Louder with Crowder. He is semi-famous for doing his Change My Mind debates, where he shows up on college campuses and has sort of open-air debates with college students. And, you know, those are entertaining videos, and I think sometimes he does a good job exposing the hypocrisies, exposing the contradictions that a lot of these inherently leftist college students believe and what they try to argue for. But, you know, Crowder is a boomer tier. By the way, how's the volume? Because I have to kind of speak softly. I have to speak a bit more soft than I usually would. Because the daughter is asleep, and she's gotten to the point where she's very sensitive. She used to sleep like a rock. She used to sleep like a baby, as they say. But now she sleeps like I don't know, something that's very light. So, Crowder is compromised. Changed my mind. Crowder is absolutely compromised. And I was going to actually get into a bunch of stuff talking about his ancestry and his last name and the last name of his mother and of his grandparents, but that's kind of besides the point. He is very boomer tier. He's very middle. He tries to appeal to sort of the lowest common denominator of conservatives, but at the same time, you know, I find him entertaining for the most part. I don't watch his show anymore, but if a Change My Mind comes out on a good topic, I'll check it out. And he was going to debate Ethan Klein, who is... Let's pull up a picture of Ethan Klein. Gosh, this guy is... This guy is truly a disgusting-looking guy. Look at this. Look at this guy. But even Ethan Klein, okay, when I was younger... I thought Ethan Klein was kind of funny. He used to do videos. He got popular on the internet by doing videos where he would mock, I think like Kickstarters, and he in fact he copied Sam Hyde, I think, in a lot of his comedy. But when he was first getting famous on the internet, he was basically purely into comedy. That was his thing. It wasn't even political comedy. It was just sort of silly comedy. And I appreciated it when I was younger. But after Ethan Klein got famous, after his comedy made him famous and rich, he started to dabble into sort of long-form podcasting and political commentary. And he pretends that he doesn't do political commentary. He pretends that he's just doing comedy in the same way that like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and those kinds of Comedy Central guys pretended that they were just doing comedy, but in fact they were doing political commentary sort of wrapped up in the dressing of comedy. Chad Chadson says he tried to be edgy in the early days. Right, he tried to be edgy. He tried to be irreverent. But now he has become your run-of-the-mill lefty comedian type. And he tries to get into more serious topics on his long-form podcast. And by the way, look at this wife. Oh my God, dude. I'm not going to talk about her too much, but oh man, I'm sorry. Anyway, he got into an argument with Steven Crowder because Crowder, I guess, challenged Klein because Klein said something, and he and his wife said something about how people should just shut up and... Whoa, what was that? Holy moly. Southern Nordic. Thank you so much for that donation. $50, man. You are too generous. Thank you. Sorry you have to go to sleep now, but hope you enjoy the show tomorrow. It will be up. I will upload this. Anyway, Klein and his wife basically said on their podcast that people should just shut up and listen to the experts, that we don't need to be critical about the experts in the government, in the CDC, in the World Health Organization. We should just shut up and listen to them. We don't have to think for ourselves. And here's why that's a good thing, basically. That was their position. And Crowder, I think it started by Crowder coming at him pretty hard on Twitter for that. And that's actually one of the things that I like about Crowder, even though he's very, like I've already said, he's very normie tier. He still tries to push this idea through his whole Change My Mind programs. He tries to push this idea that people should be able to justify and explain their beliefs about politics and about society in general. If you have an opinion and you're going to express that opinion, if you're going to promote some kind of stance on something, be able to at least explain and justify it, and articulate why you have that opinion. That I think is, even going as far back as Aristotle, I think. This is something that goes as far back as Aristotle. What makes man different from beasts is our ability to rationalize in a lot of ways. It's that's if you're going to be a man, you don't just blindly follow. And of course, there's some nuance here. Of course, there's hierarchy. There's things that, when we're a part of a society, we need to respect hierarchy. We need to respect certain people who outrank us at times. But if the person who outranks you has no good reasoning behind their orders or behind the rules that are being enforced by them, then we should question them. We should go against them. And in an ideal society, in an ideal nation, rules would follow natural order and they would make sense. And every grown man would be, in a sense, self-governing, because every grown man would understand why the rules are the way they are and would follow them because they make sense. But only a slave, in my opinion, only a real brown-nosing, sycophantic slave promotes the idea that grown men should just turn their brains off and obey without thinking about it. And that's what Ethan Klein was saying we should do. Okay, that's Ethan Klein's position. That's did I close? That's this asshole's position. Okay. And I think Crowder was right to challenge him on that. And so what happened, I'm really stretching this out. I did not plan to talk this long on this, but I guess it's worth going into detail. What happened was this guy, Klein, agreed to debate Crowder. And they agreed to debate one-on-one. By the way, I am reading what you guys say in the chat. And I'd like to actually engage with you guys, but I'm trying to get through this monologue. They agreed to have a one-on-one debate. They set it up, went live, and within just a few seconds of being live on air with each other, preparing for the debate, Klein tells Crowder, guess what? I'm not going to debate you. I'm going to have this other guy, this expert, Sam Cedar. He's a political expert. I'm going to have him debate you because I'm too stupid to debate you. And I'm not exaggerating. Klein literally says that. He literally says, I am not intelligent enough to have this debate. Almost exactly those words. I'm not intelligent enough for this. I'm not a good debater. So I've invited a political expert to debate you, Steven Crowder. And the guy that he invited on, Sam Cedar, has a history of basically stalking people with larger viewerships than himself, trying to get the clout of debating people with bigger audiences. And he's even had a personal history, I'm pretty sure, with Steven Crowder. And Crowder says, fuck that. I agreed to debate you, Ethan Klein, not Sam Cedar. Don't want to debate him. Don't like that guy. All bets are off here. Fuck this. And he signed off. And since that happened, if you go to Google and you look at the news articles that have been put out about this debate, the leftist media is having a field day. There are many different publications. This only shows Insider, Newsweek, and Sportskeeda, but all the big leftist YouTubers, the big leftist publications out there, they're putting this out as if Steven Crowder was just embarrassed by this situation. He got checked. He was made to sit down. He was scared. He ran away with his tail between his legs, and Ethan Klein really made him look like a fool. And whenever this kind of thing happens to me, I always wonder what the subconscious lesson of this is supposed to be. Like, look at Newsweek. Newsweek used to be considered, I think, a respectable publication. And Newsweek is putting out this kind of shit. Sam Cedar ambushes Steven Crowder on YouTube show. Sparks meltdown. So Steven Crowder had a meltdown, and he's being mocked online after he had a meltdown when he was tricked into debating Sam Cedar on the latest episode of the H3 podcast with Ethan Klein. The conservative political commentator was left panicking when Klein added a surprise guest to the podcast, who happened to be none other than the progressive political commentator, Cedar, who Crowder has avoided debating in the past. Okay. So what is the hidden lesson here? What's the subconscious takeaway that the audience is meant to receive from this event? I think, actually, I don't think this was planned. It might have been actually a psyop. And knowing that Klein and who he is and what tribe he's from could have been a psyop. But even if it wasn't planned, the takeaway of this, I think, is meant to create in the minds of the audience of Klein the inclination to offload their thinking to experts. What Klein did, so this is the irony of what Klein did. The whole debate was supposed to be about debating somebody who promoted the idea that we shouldn't think for ourselves, that we should just let the experts decide things for us. Okay? That's what Klein's position is. Just let the CDC think for us. Let the World Health Organization think for us. It's dangerous for us to be critical of them, to think critically about this, to analyze for ourselves. That's not good, is what his position was. Crowder challenges that and says, well, why don't you justify that yourself? Why don't you make that argument yourself and really try to justify and explain why you're taking that position? And instead, of Klein doing that, he says, I'm too stupid to think for myself. I'm too stupid to explain and justify things. I'm going to invite an expert and explain and justify this for me. So it's basically a performative action. You've heard of performative contradictions before, right? This is a performative begging the question. This is him, instead of explaining and justifying why we should just believe experts, he just brings in an expert to explain and justify why we should believe experts. So that's the irony of it. And unfortunately, this position, if there are young and impressionable people out there, I'm sure, who watch Ethan Klein, and what's going to happen is these young and impressionable people will see this. They'll see Klein saying, oh, I'm too dumb to debate this. I'm going to have the expert come in and take my position. And they're going to think, wow, Ethan Klein, he's so down to earth. He's so humble, you know. He knows that he's not an expert. He knows that he's not smart. Guess what? I know I'm not smart too. But at least I know what experts to believe in. And the next time, imagine your brother or sister, or your mom or dad, or your cousin, or your best friend starts to take this kind of mentality. You will never be able to change their mind again about anything when it comes to things that are promoted by the establishment media. Because the next time you try to have a debate or a discussion with them and you try to convince them that they're wrong about whatever opinion they've just absorbed through osmosis from the mainstream media, they're not even going to try to explain or justify themselves, because they learn from things like this that they don't have to. They should just be humble, admit that they're too stupid, and forward you to the experts. Say, here, look, here's the experts. Talk to them. Okay, so that's why I think this debate has been so promoted, why they're having this, publications like Newsweek come out and say, wow, Klein really slammed Crowder. He really embarrassed him. Look at this. It's an argument. It basically just teaches people this is what you should do. So yeah, that's what I think about this debate. And it's, to talk about Crowder, okay, it might seem like I took Crowder's side to begin with. It might seem like I think that Crowder was in the right in this situation. But I think that his reaction during this debate was all wrong. I think that what he did, essentially, if you didn't see any of this, what he did was he freaked out. He started calling them names. He's called Ethan Klein a liar. He said that he's not going to debate Cedar because he never agreed to it. He started saying even things like, oh, Cedar doesn't have a big enough audience for me to take him seriously. That's totally the wrong route to go down. I think if I were Crowder, what I would have done is basically say what I said at the beginning of this description of this whole event, which was a man should be able to rationalize, justify, and explain their opinions on things. And for him to just invite in an expert, a so-called expert, to state his opinions for him basically makes him a slave, an idiot slave. And it's pathetic that this guy, look at this stupid looking face, that this guy has to invite somebody else to talk for him. That's basically what I would have said. So that's the first topic of tonight. Let me look at the chat. YouTube Showad Casa JB says, questioning rootless cosmopolitans is anti-Semitic. Yeah, basically, and that's sort of related to the next thing that I'm going to discuss here. Chad Chadson says, don't think for yourself, bro. Exactly. That's the lesson here. Hoppa Perspective says, trust the experts equals don't think for yourself. Exactly. Scotty's Gun says, unfortunate for humanity, thinking is pretty hard. Yeah. And that's, really the real tragedy of it is most people, I think, are not capable of it. And that's kind of a paradox. Is that, it's debatable as to whether or not a truly natural system, a pre-industrial system of society, has this many sheep in it. But certainly after the Industrial Revolution, the amount of sheep that exist in society has increased exponentially. And we now live in a world where we can't expect people to think for themselves. At least most people. But because I don't want people to be sheep, I don't want people to be slaves, I don't want to live in a world where most people are basically NPCs and bug people, I still promote this as an ideal. I still promote the idea, and just in case there's anybody out there listening who can transcend their surroundings, who can improve themselves. Men Like God says, has Germ's volume been this low the entire time? Look, I said this before, I have to speak quietly because my daughter is sleeping in the other room, and she's been a very light sleeper lately. So just turn up the volume if you have to. Chad Chadson says, oddly enough, Stephen is more of a Zionist than Ethan. Yeah, that's true. Crowder is definitely that's the strange part of the whole thing, and it is that Crowder has some opinions of some political opinions that are even more kosher than Klein, but still, I'd still rather have a conversation with Crowder than Klein. Anyway, I'll move on to the next topic. The next topic I don't have as much to say about, but it's still, I think, worth talking about. If you haven't seen this meme yet, French general. This is an ex-army general. Delaware. Now, we'll just watch the clip. And Halo Madness says, wake your daughter up and tell her about the bikes. It's never too early. Yeah, 7 months. 7 months, and she's already hailing victory. So General Delaware had an interview on French television recently. And we're just going to watch this clip, and you guys tell me. What is he implying here? What is the implication of this ex-army general, Delaware?
Donc j'ai une question à vous poser, puisque vous parlez dans les médias, mais vous parliez dans les médias avant de parler dans des médias comme Valeurs Actuelles, vous avez fait différentes interviews.
Oh, let's get some subtitles here. Let's get some subtitles. Maybe this isn't the best one. Maybe there's another one with subtitles.
Donc j'ai une question. question à vous poser, puisque vous parlez dans les médias, mais vous parliez dans les médias avant de parler dans des médias comme Valeurs Actuelles. Vous avez fait différentes interviews, et en particulier dans la tribune diplomatique internationale. Et dans la tribune diplomatique internationale, on vous posait la question de savoir si les élections avaient été truquées aux États-Unis. Et je vais lire votre réponse pour éclairer un petit peu de qui vous êtes, puisque vous n'arrêtez pas de dire que vous êtes ni LR, ni FN, ni etc. C'est-à-dire, vous essayez de faire passer auprès des Français l'idée que...
So basically, I don't know if you can read these subtitles. Basically, this very Hebrew-looking interviewer is asking the general about previous statements that he made about the media. It says, whether the elections
Poser la question de savoir si les élections avaient été truquées aux États-Unis.
were rigged in the United States. Okay, that's the question. Were the elections rigged in the United States? And what the general here said is basically yes, and the media is controlled, and it helped to rig the election in the United States, the Biden-Trump election. Okay.
Donc on vous pose la question, la tribune diplomatique internationale, l'hypothèse d'une fraude importante appliquée à quelques États clés le jour du scrutin est-elle crédible? On parle des États-Unis. Mon intime conviction me dit que oui, car il y a à mes yeux trop d'indices concordants pour permettre à la...
Okay, so he's reading a statement that the general made, which is, he says, in my eyes, there are too many concordant clues to allow the Western media pack,
La meute médiatique
which
occidentale dont nous savons
we know who controls it, to convince me otherwise. So he's saying, look, there are so many clues that the elections were rigged that I will not allow the media pack, the media cartel or the media clique, to tell me otherwise, because I know who controls this clique, who controls this media establishment, essentially.
qui la contrôle de me convaincre du contraire. Donc j'ai une question à vous poser. Qui contrôle la meute médiatique?
So he's saying, qui contrôle la meute médiatique? Who controls the media pack? That's his very frustrated question that he's asked. His very irritated question.
J'ai envie de savoir également.
Général de la Ward.
Ah, vous le savez bien.
And he goes, you know very well.
Ah non, mais
Regardez,
moi non plus, je sais pas.
regardez qui contrôle la meute
Who controls the media pack in the world and in France?
médiatique dans le monde et en France.
Who controls the Washington Post? Who controls the New York Times? Let's find out. We'll find out after this clip.
Qui contrôle le Washington Post, qui contrôle le New York Times, qui contrôle chez nous BFM TV et tous les journaux qui viennent s'agrouper.
All the newspapers that come and cluster around it. Who are these people?
Qui?
Okay. Qui? His head shaking. His enraged head shaking.
Qui?
Pardon?
Qui? Vous qui parlez de Dreyfus, monsieur. Qui?
Qui? Ben, c'est la communauté
The community that you know very well, he says.
que vous connaissez bien.
Mon Dieu.
Ah non, mais alors là, on va pas...
The person in the background, mon Dieu, my God.
Que vous connaissez bien.
Mon Dieu.
Ah non, mais alors là, on va pas partir là-dessus. On va arrêter là.
And he's saying, oh no, we won't go there. We'll leave it at that. We won't go there.
On va arrêter là, mon
C'est
général.
honteux.
Je suis désolé, on peut pas laisser dire ça sur l'antenne.
Voilà pourquoi on les a
Je
traités
suis
de
désolé.
factions. Voilà pourquoi.
We can't let him say that on air.
Je suis désolé, non, on arrête là. On coupe, s'il vous plaît, on enlève le général. Voilà, merci, on coupe.
Cut the general off. That's it. Thank you. We're cutting this. We can't go on with this.
On peut pas continuer là-dessus.
So, let's find out. Qui? Who did he say? Washington Post? Let's see who first. Financier Eugene Meyer. Meyer was descended from a long line of rabbis. That's weird. So Meyer purchased the Washington Post. Very strange. One of the earliest owners. So, I mean, he's obviously not the owner anymore, but, you know, whoever he sold it to obviously was approved by this man. Let's see who owns it today. It says work continued by his successors, Catherine and Phil Graham, Meyer's daughter and son-in-law. The Graham family sold the paper to Nash Holdings, a holding company established by Jeff Bezos. Interesting. So here at the Washington Post, we have a certain tribal family that defined the direction of the newspaper. And what about the New York Times? Oh my gosh. Salzburger. His paternal grandfather was... Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. That's so weird. What a coincidence. That's so strange. That's like every media company you look at, it's just this weird coincidence that they're all connected with a certain tribe. Gosh, we shouldn't talk about that. What about the other one? BMTV? Was that the name of it?
Ah non, bah alors.
C'est la... Pardon?
Qui? Vous qui parlez, monsieur. Qui?
Mon Dieu.
Non, bah alors là on va.
Qui contrôle
BFM TV. This is a French cable news network. Oh, this looks government. Alan Weil served as the chairman. That name is pretty suspect in itself. Kurt Weil was born into a you-know-who-ish family. So it is potentially a you-know-who-ish name. But, you know, you could look into all the examples and show that this media pack that he's talking about. We could go into each and every example, but the interesting thing about this, in my opinion, the takeaway, I would say, from this clip is, could anyone tell me whether or not this general mentioned any ethnic or religious group by name? He didn't. Obviously, he didn't say a single word that starts with J and ends with Jewish. He didn't say it at all. All he did was ask the question. Who controls the media establishment? Saxel subscribed. I think that's what that notification was. Thank you for subscribing. Or Saxily. This general didn't say a single word about the you-know-whos. Yet, he's labeled an anti-Semite. And this isn't the first time that this has happened. There's a pretty famous incident of Elon Musk, who said, "Who do you think owns the press?" Hello? And just by asking this question, Musk was labeled an anti-Semite by a lot of people. Now, it is worth noting that Musk was actually mocking conspiracy theorists, and afterwards he said he was pointing out to aspiring journalist and Rodin spokesmodel Josh Topp, who thinks that public polls are controlled by powerful people, that the media is owned by the same. Anyone who thought this was anti-Semitic is just revealing their inner bigot. The context is very clear. So he obviously, Elon Musk is not based in red pilled about these things. He's part of the establishment himself. But the fact that asking this question got him labeled as an anti-Semite and got people like Ben Collins here quite nervous. Just asking the question, who owns the press? Who owns the media? We're not supposed to think about that. We're not supposed to ask that question. We're supposed to believe in this fairy tale that the media, the press, the establishment in general, is owned by everybody, just random people. It's a democracy that we live in. There's no oligarchy. There's no controlling groups. How could you even ask that? And it takes a real Alain Weil is categorized as French Jews, by the way. It was just confirmed in chat. Okay, we've got the confirmation. Yeah, look at that. Oh, perfect. So yeah. But we're not even supposed to ask that question. And it takes a real midwit. It takes a real top-tier, brainwashed midwit to jump through the mental gymnastics of saying, oh, well, of course, we're not allowed to ask the question of who controls the media or who controls the press because, that's an old anti-Semitic trope, and you have to know the history of, the Nazis accusing the Jews of controlling the media, and, of course, nobody actually controls the media, nobody actually... There's no secret conspiracy behind anything like that. There's just this, it's random. It's a democracy we live in. Anybody could just create and own a media company. So it takes a real top tier midwit to really get around this issue. And but to anybody who is not totally brainwashed, it's very, very revealing that just asking the question of who controls the media gets you labeled an anti-Semite. So, qui? Just ask qui, and you will find out. Anyway, let's see what people are saying now in the chat. Boomy says, if you congratulate them on their dominance, then that is okay. Yes, that is perfectly acceptable. If you praise the you-know-whos for their influence, then they'll come right out and admit it. But if you criticize them for their influence, that's no mas. They'll get you. Hapa Perspective asked, have you looked into BlackRock, who owns it, and what they promote? I haven't looked into them in particular, but I've heard about BlackRock buying up single-family homes in the United States at ridiculous prices. Southern Nordic actually talked about this in a recent video. How this giant investment company is buying up single-family homes, and other companies are doing this too. I think even like Chinese government companies, Arab government-sponsored companies, they're coming into the United States, buying up single-family homes, and turning them into rental properties, which is making home ownership more and more difficult in the United States. And obviously the future, the agenda behind all of this is what the World Economic Forum has been promoting, which is, in the future, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. And that's another thing that only top-tier midwits can hear and justify somehow, because they feel like, oh, they're so smart for looking past the superficial meaning of that. It's not exactly what you think it is, obviously. You're not just going to be a slave that owns nothing. It's just that you're going to be renting things. It's going to be so much more convenient. And you won't need to have the responsibility of maintaining things for yourself. It'll just be drones will fly plumbers and painters and mechanics to fix your car or paint your house or fix your drain. You won't have to worry about anything like that. They'll just have drones fly those techs in, fix things for you. That kind of a thing. Hapa Perspective says the entire board of BlackRock is you-know-who-ish, and they are close with the CCP. Interesting. But I didn't want to get... Let's get on to the next topic here, which is critical race theory. This has been a major topic in the media lately, and it's been discussed, I think, even by people in the alt media a lot lately. I haven't seen the takes given by any alt media people, but I know people like Keith Woods, I think, put out a video on it. No White Guilt, I think, has been talking about it. And it's, the critical race theory is being talked about like it's this anti-white agenda, part of this anti-white agenda, and it is. It certainly is. But I think the real mistake in this whole conversation is thinking that critical race theory is something isolated. I think that's the mistake. Did we get a subscriber or a donation there? Graham donated $2.84. Thank you, Graham. Asking the question, have you been hearing about the residential schools the residential schools news in Canada? It's big news here. It's hard to know what to believe, but they seem to be spinning it into a Canadian cost narrative. Some of the stories sound quite embellished, but I don't know. Are you referring to the mass burials, the so-called mass burials of Indians at these like boarding schools in Canada? I've heard some stuff about it, but I haven't really delved into it. The one thing I have heard, and I think I heard this from Argent. He's a YouTuber from Canada, Argent. If I recall correctly, he said something like these claims about these mass burials have not been independently investigated. That somebody found something with ground scanning radar, and based on certain scans that were taken by some who knows what group, this idea that there were mass burials of children that were just all the implications too that came along with it, all that they were killed, they were buried without buried in secret to try to cover it up, all these sorts of things, all of these implications that were spun out of it, and the initial fact itself that these blips on the ground scanning radar are in fact children that are buried there. All of this is just taken for granted, and that no independent investigation has been done about the entire situation. So that, if that's true, that speaks volumes, I think, about the situation. That if they haven't dug these remains up, if they haven't actually looked underground, because ground scanning radar is notoriously vague. It's notoriously vague. You basically get, when you're scanning the ground, you get blips on your radar screen, but interpreting those blips is a challenge, to say the least. So you have to dig to confirm what those blips actually are. And even if they found a lot of bodies of children, let's say, underground, the interpretation that these were children that were murdered and then buried to cover it up is certainly a stretch. There could have been children who died of disease. This, back then, was a time when a lot of children died of disease, especially Indian children, if I'm not mistaken. And it could have happened over a period of time, not all at once. So, obviously it's a psyop. Obviously it's something that is meant to really twist the screw further. It's just another twist of the screw of making white Canadians feel guilty, of making them feel ashamed, and like you're saying, it plays into the same kind of thing as the H cost. But anyway, let's talk about critical race theory a little bit. I find it interesting that it's basically, for anybody who really wants to do any research on this, it's unquestionable that critical race theory is part of the larger category called critical theory. Critical theory is something I've talked about in previous videos. I think the video called "Is Academia Right Wing" that I put out just a few weeks ago, I talked about critical theory. And critical theory is a Marxist invention. Comes out of the Frankfurt School. And there's a lot of work that's been done about the Frankfurt School and about cultural Marxism and critical theory out there. So if you've never heard of this, go check these things out. Look up the Frankfurt School. Look up cultural Marxism. Critical race theory is critical theory applied to race. And what the purpose of Marxism was, and cultural Marxism in particular, was revolution. It is based on destabilizing. The whole agenda is to destabilize the hierarchies of a society, destabilize their norms, subvert their norms, and cause a revolution. And the original Marxism was meant purely to be a political revolution of the workers against the so-called capitalist state. But when they realized that the workers of the world were not going to unite, the Marxists sort of changed their strategy. They adapted, and they created new theories of revolution that turned every single group on the margins, every kind of minority group, into potential revolutionaries against the system. And the whole purpose is, Marxism itself, going back to the first, or to the key question, who came up with Marxism? Who promoted Marxism? These are questions that I've done a lot of discussion on before, but basically, it is a revolutionary movement. It's meant to subvert and create a revolution against the predominant norms and institutions and culture of a society. And this is being aimed predominantly, especially obviously in Western white countries, it's being aimed at white European identity and culture and the associated morality, the values, the social norms. All of these things are being attacked by critical theory, and especially critical race theory. And it's because it is a Marxist, you-know-who-ish doctrine, and it's meant to destabilize previously autonomous, previously independent nations. Okay, so it's important to talk about that origin of critical race theory, and most people, I think, who have any semblance of political and historical understanding know that Marxism and communism are bad. Okay, most people still have that remnant, that instinctive memory of fear and hatred of Marxism and communism that used to be universal in the United States. So it's pretty effective when you're having a conversation, I think, about critical race theory to talk about that, to talk about its Marxist origins and how it's essentially a communist subversion. But when you look at how the media talks about critical race theory, this is coming out of CNN. Okay, let's read this article a little bit from CNN. Critical race theory. You may be hearing those three words a lot lately, or a lot these days. Lawmakers in Tennessee and Idaho have banned its teaching from their public schools curriculum, while parents in Texas are opposing a school district's efforts to combat racism with lessons in cultural awareness, seen by some as critical race theory. It's a concept that's been around for decades, and that seeks to understand and address inequality and racism in the United States. The term also has become politicized and has been attacked by its critics as a Marxist ideology that's a threat to the American way of life. Okay, so this is the important bit. This is why I began with that preamble about Marxism. This CNN article portrays this criticism, this idea that critical race theory has become politicized. It's become politicized, and it's being attacked by its critics as a Marxist ideology, okay, and a threat to the American way of life. So the way that they are characterizing this fact, that it's a Marxist ideology and a threat to the American way of life, that's a fact. But they're characterizing that as if this is just something that right-wingers, these ignorant right-wingers who, they're just racist. They just want, all that cultural Marxism, or cultural, all that critical race theory is doing is it's addressing racism. It's talking about inequality. But these evil white men, these racist old whiteys, they just want to characterize it. it's a figment of their imagination, but they want to criticize it like it's a Marxist ideology, like it's a threat to the American way of life. Let's see what happened. Our Myth, Their Lies has donated $2.04. Good read, y'all. The Camp of the Saints by Raspale. Thank you, Our Myth, Their Lies, for the kind donation. Thank you very much. I appreciate every donation. It means a lot. Thank you so much. But see, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to characterize this criticism as if it's just something that these evil right-wingers are making up. You know, the idea that it's a threat to the American way of life, that it's a Marxist ideology, that's just, you're politicizing this, you racist white man. You're inventing this. All that it is it's trying to address inequality and racism. I can't believe you would even call it Marxist. Are you kidding me? That's what they're trying to do. That's what how they're trying to characterize this. And the rest of the article here, what's critical race theory? The rest of this article and this explanation doesn't say the word Marxist one more time. You look up Marx on this, the only two times that it mentions Marxism is in this sentence that I just read, and at the end, where they're quoting Trump. Students in our universities are inundated with critical race theory. This is a Marxist doctrine holding that America is a wicked and racist nation, that even young children are complicit in oppression, and that our entire society must be radically transformed. All of this is true. This is 100% true what Trump just said in this quote. But when they explain in this article what it actually is, they don't mention Marx at all. Waking Up Crying is asking, is this being streamed anywhere else than YouTube? It is being streamed on Odyssey, I believe, if my program worked correctly. But anyway, so yeah, this explanation only takes it back to, so it says, who came up with the idea? Well, one of its founding scholars hosted a workshop on critical race theory in 1989. But it goes back much further than that, to the work of civil rights activists, such as W.E.B. Du Bois, or Du Bois, I don't know how, I think it's Du Bois if you're French. Fannie Lou Hamer. What was that? Waking Up Crying has donated $5. Thank you so much. Deluminati, he says. A fine comment. Very inspiring, thoughtful, thought-provoking. Thank you, though. Thank you very much, Waking Up Crying. I'll have to come check you out streaming soon, too. Waking Up Crying, he has a stream on Twitch. If you any of you want to check him out, he does some epic gamer streams, and he's quite entertaining. So go check out Waking Up Crying on Twitch if you're into if you're an epic gamer. So anyway, all they do here is try to say that this was something that American civil rights activists came up with. This is deceit by what's the word? Omission. This is a lie by omission. They say that the earliest origins of the theory go back to the 1970s. The earliest origins? That's as far back, the 1960s and 70s. This theory goes back to critical theory, which was invented by the Frankfurt School in the 1930s, which drew on ideas from Karl Marx, which go back to the 1800s, which drew on ideas from Hegel, which goes back to the earlier 1800s. When did Hegel go back? Okay, late 17, early 1800s. What was that? Someone else gave a donation or what? Our Myth, Their Lies donated another $2.72. Thank you. Great show, sir, he says. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Hegel, Marx wasn't just influenced by Hegel, but he was a big influence. Hegel was influenced by Kabbalism. He was influenced by mystical millennialism and mystical Judaism. These are Marx was part of a long family of rabbis, and I'm sure things like Frankism and Sabbateanism come into the picture too. So these are things that go back hundreds of years, and to try to say that this began in the 1960s and 70s in this, especially in this like CNN article, it totally whitewashes the entire thing, and it steers people away. It misdirects people from the truth about critical race theory, which is that it's definitely bound up in a world revolutionary movement. It is not something that just addresses racism or inequality. It is part of a world revolutionary movement. And someday soon they will be honest about that. I guarantee you. They will feel powerful enough to be honest about that. And a lot of people actually are. But when it comes to these kinds of articles that are meant to appeal to the normie, they whitewash it pretty good. So, that is what I have to say about critical race theory. Oh, here's something else that I thought was kind of funny. Found this on 4chan's poll. This is a screenshot from Reddit. This person got a lot of updoots. Doth my proverbial cap for the updoots, Reddit gold, good sir. He says, the fact that white people are doing everything they can to ban critical race theory says a lot. Facepalm emoji. Brown facepalm emoji. And then Golden Goddess Pisces says, also with many the updoot, says, they know their time is winding down. They never were the superior race. They were just the superior liars and thieves. Those whiteys. Whoa, what was that? $3 from Hapa Perspective. Look into BlackRock. I second that. Look into BlackRock. Thank you, Hapa Perspective. I really appreciate it. You guys are so generous. Thank you. Anyway, Golden Goddess Pisces says, they know their time is winding down. So yeah, we're just the superior liars and thieves. The superior liars who lied their way across the Atlantic Ocean, who lied gunpowder and rifles and frigates and galleons and these world-conquering instruments of technology and social, political, military innovation, these systems like philosophy, science. We just lied those things into existence with our little lies, and we stole from nature. We stole from... Well, someone else just donate. Scotty's Guns with $10. Moving my life from Illinois to Wyoming in 2 weeks. Holy shit, man. Looking to buy some land in the next few years. Plant food. Meet like-minded men to train with. A new chapter in life. Wish me luck. You and your family will always be welcome on the homestead. Scotty, thank you so much, man. And best of luck to you. really hope that you get everything that you're going for, and I know you will. I know you will get it, and that's awesome. That's really awesome. I will definitely at some point get out to visit you, and same to you when I get everything settled in Quebec, when we both have our homesteads, you got to come visit too. We've got to compare notes. Definitely got to link up. So best of luck to you. That's awesome. It's really cool. Let's chat soon. Let's catch up a little. Scotty's a good old friend of mine. And looks like he's about to be doing the right thing in life. He's about to make that big leap. That's all I could say is it's awesome. So, anyway. Oh, and thank you again for the $10. Anyway, we just lied our way across the world. We just lied philosophy into existence. We lied science. We lied world navigation. We lied all these things. We stole. How do these people believe these kinds of things? Siege asks, why Quebec? Because that's where my wife is from. And there's a lot of land up there. There's a lot of nature. There's a lot of beauty. It's still a relatively, overwhelmingly homogeneous French population. It's relatively safe. Land is relatively cheap. It's appealing. It's attractive. The fact that my wife's family comes from there is really the decisive factor. But on its own, it's a really great place. Look at Quebec City, for example. It looks like truly a European city. I think it's as close to a European territory in the United States, or in North America. I'm sorry, North America, that you can get. Anyway, let's read this last comment here. Semi-Homemade says, that's the thing. Those that fight against it are showing their true colors and their fears of what will happen. But it's telling, because that's exactly what they'd do if there weren't limitations today. They try to raise the few black or minority supremacists as how it'd be if we had even the full story of the inequality. And it's absolute horseshit. Almost everyone on this side is advocating equality. There would be a ton of steps before any other supremacist theory came into the majority. We are asking for equality, and it starts with fucking getting all the information. Final thought on knowledge. If they claim just knowing this will teach more racism, wouldn't anyone who reads Mein Kampf be a Nazi? Trump must be a Nazi by their own argument. Well, they think Trump is a Nazi. But, yeah, this is something that these kinds of people always talk about, which is, oh, what are you afraid? Are you afraid of becoming a minority white man? Because you're scared of what you're scared that the blacks and brown people will do to you what you did to them? Well, you better be afraid. They say these kinds of things. As if any group, anywhere, would want to become a minority in their own country. And this is the other thing I wanted to say about this comment. He says, it's telling because that's exactly what they'd do if there weren't limitations today. If we lived in a white supremacist society, if we truly lived in a white supremacist society, and the institutions, the powerful institutions of the establishment were truly white supremacist and run by white supremacists, what limitations would there be? Uh-oh. I don't know if you can hear that, but Sounds like my daughter just woke up crying. Oh no. Anyway, I'll just make this last point. There wouldn't be any limitations. We do not, the one of the biggest pieces of evidence that you can point to that we don't live in a white supremacist society is that people are afraid to say that they're a white supremacist. It's not socially acceptable to be a quote-unquote white supremacist. And nobody, I mean, even people like me who are proud to be white, who want to preserve the existence of my people, who want my territories, my nation to remain in existence and to have a majority, a supermajority even, homogeneity even within their own homelands. Even I would not say I'm a white supremacist. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have to go pick up and comfort my beautiful little daughter. Actually, I would actually bring her to the camera if it weren't for the fact that bringing her out here with all the light and everything would end up waking her up even more, and we want her to sleep. So it's been a good stream, everybody. Thank you for coming, and maybe I'll stream again soon. It's always a lot of fun. I wish I could have talked about. There was something else I wanted to talk about, which is a movie called Captain Fantastic. By the way, Scott, you might actually like this movie because it's about a homesteader, and it blackwashes homesteading. It whitewashes it in a weird way. It sort of like promotes it and blackwashes it at the same time in weird ways. It's very contradictory. It's very strange. But it's about a homesteader that by the end decides to almost give up on this anti-establishment independent lifestyle. And maybe I'll talk about this more because there's a lot I could talk about with this movie. Maybe I'll talk about this more in a future stream. So good to talk to you guys. Thanks for coming to the stream. Hope you all have a good night, and